If you're new to Flutter, then the numerous files and folders contained in a Flutter project might feel overwhelming. The good news is understanding them isn't as complicated as it seems. In this quick video, we'll demystify the Flutter project structure. By the end, you will have developed a solid understanding that will let you build your Flutter project with greater confidence. This video assumes you have a working Flutter dev environment. If you need help setting up Flutter, check out the link to the Flutter setup guide video below. Let's get started. In a terminal window, we'll create a new Flutter project and then open it in VS Code. Select the File Explorer panel on the left-hand side and navigate to the lib folder. The lib folder contains the Dart code you'll write for your Flutter app. When a new Flutter app is created, the main.dart file is generated and contains a very simple working Flutter app. The main.dart file serves as the entry point for a Flutter project. As you build your app, the code you write will be placed in additional Dart files within the lib folder. For example, an e-commerce app might have a number of screens, each of which would have its own Dart file. We might have a home screen, a category screen, a product screen, a search screen, and a settings screen. While these files can be placed directly in the lib folder, it's a good idea to organize files into subfolders to keep things manageable. In this example, we might want to create a screens folder that holds the Dart files for each screen contained in the app. At some point, it might even make sense to further organize a folder into subfolders. For instance, there could be multiple product screens. In this scenario, we can create a product subfolder within the screens folder and move the related product screens into it. It's very common for Flutter projects to have folders for specific types of code. So, in addition to screens, there might be additional folders for items such as models, surfaces, and widgets. At the start of a project, it might not be clear how to best organize the lib folder. This is completely fine. You can always move files and folders around at any point. As your project grows, you'll get a better sense of how to best organize it. As a Flutter developer, the lib folder is where the vast majority of your work will be done. The pubspec.yml file is used to manage configuration settings, dependencies, and assets. YAML is a file format that is commonly used to hold configuration. It's a recursive acronym that stands for YAML ain't a markup language. You'll notice the file contains a number of lines that begin with the pound symbol. These lines are known as comments. Comments are ignored by the compiler and are intended to serve as notes that programmers can write to themselves and others. Comments can even contain code snippets that will run when uncommented. We'll see this later on in the video. At the top of the pubspec.yml file are project configuration settings such as the project name, description, and Flutter SDK version. Also contained in the pubspec.yml file are dependencies. Dependencies, which are also known as packages, are external libraries of code that can be used to extend the functionality of a project. We can add packages to a Flutter project by using the Pub Package Manager. For example, to use different fonts in a Flutter project, we can add the Google Fonts pub package. To do this, enter Flutter pub add followed by a package name into the terminal window. In this case, we would enter Flutter pub add Google_fonts. Running this command adds the Google Fonts dependency to the pubspec.yml file. When the pubspec.yml file is saved, pub will fetch the Google Fonts package as well as any additional packages that the Google Fonts package relies on. I have a dedicated video that covers the ins and outs of the pubspec.yml file and the pub package manager for Dart. Look for the link in the video description. Finally, the pubspec.yml file can be used to declare assets such as local images, icons, videos, and sound clips. Assets are added to a Flutter project by declaring them in the Assets section. The default pubspec file contains a few examples that have been commented out. We can uncomment one to add an image asset. Notice that when we save the pubspec file, we receive a warning from VS Code. This is happening because an asset has been declared, but the file itself does not exist. Assets are typically placed in an assets folder in the root of the Flutter project. This folder does not exist in the default Flutter project and needs to be created. I'll drag the corresponding image file for the asset we declared from the desktop into the assets folder and save the pubspec file. Saving the pubspec file triggers the pubget command and updates packages and assets. Since the image is now present, the warning disappears. The pubspec.lock file is an exhaustive list of packages used in the Flutter project. Oftentimes, packages rely on additional packages. These dependencies are listed here. The pubspec.lock file contains specific versions of the packages listed in the pubspec.yml file. This is slightly different from the pubspec.yml file, which contains a version range instead of an exact number. The pubspec.lock file is managed by pub and should not be edited directly. The test folder is where test files go. Test code is written to ensure code quality and that the app functions as intended. Typically, as new code is added to the codebase, corresponding tests are written and placed in this folder. You probably already know this, but Flutter is a cross-platform development framework and supports Android, iOS, macOS, web, Windows, and Linux. In a Flutter project, a corresponding folder exists for each of these platforms and contains platform-specific configuration files. But what exactly does that mean? Imagine you're building a weather app for Android and iOS smartphones. There's a good chance that this app will need to use location services to show local weather conditions. In order to get location detection up and running, we would need to edit settings in the configuration files contained in the Android and iOS folders. The platform folders are where these changes should be made. The build folder contains the final compiled and assembled output of your Flutter project. This includes the APK file for Android, the IPA file for iOS, executable files for the desktop platforms, and JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and media for web. Also contained in the build folder are intermediate files created during the compilation process and cache files to speed up subsequent builds. The build folder is managed by Flutter. While you will use files in this folder to distribute your final app, you won't need to edit its contents. The Dart tool, Flutter plugins, and metadata files are typically not intended to be manually edited by users. These are automatically generated and managed by the Flutter tooling to support various aspects of the development and build processes. The .idea folder and the project.yml file are configuration files used by the Android Studio and IntelliJ IDEs, or integrated development environments. These are alternatives to VS Code and something you can likely ignore. Analysis options, similar to Pubspec, is another YAML file, which means that it holds configuration options. In this case, it allows for the configuration of the Dart analyzer, which can be used to define rules to check against code to ensure coding standards are being met. Finally, we have the gitignore file. This is used by Git, which is version control software used to back up source code into a repository. The gitignore file specifies which files should be excluded from the code repository. For example, the build folder is listed in the gitignore file. We wouldn't want to track this folder in version control because it can be generated from the source code that is already being tracked. Given that the contents of this folder can be gigabytes in size, it isn't practical to store this in a repository. All right, that wraps up our walkthrough of the Flutter project structure. I hope this video demystifies the various files and folders contained in a Flutter project and boosts your confidence in navigating and utilizing them effectively. If you found this guide helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more Flutter tutorials. Don't hesitate to drop your questions or topics you'd like me to cover in the comments below. Happy coding, and I'll see you in the next video.